Welcome to the American Legion Post 234 in Northborough, Massachusetts for Candidates Night 2019. My name is Mitch Cohen, and I've been asked to moderate tonight's discussion. I will attempt to speak closer. Ooh, look at that. I'm sure you all know, but our election is next Tuesday, May 14th, 2019. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. For the first time, all precincts will be voting at Milliken Middle School, not the individual elementary schools. Always good to get that reminder in, and I may remind you one more time tonight. There are 9 Northborough residents on the ballot. We've invited all 9, and we're very pleased to have 8 with us tonight. Unfortunately, Chris Covino, a candidate for the one-year position on the Regional School Committee, is unable to join us. In addition to the candidates, there is one ballot question: to purchase land for a new fire station and finish the design for that station. We invited Smokey the Bear and some Dalmatians to join us, but they were unable to attend. The candidates are welcome to speak to this question if they wish, and when the time comes, you may ask related questions. This is a candidates' night, not a debate. This means candidates are expected to offer their own ideas on how to make our town an even better place to live, and not to comment on what other candidates say. We'll start with introductions and a few questions for our candidates. These include many questions submitted to us in advance. After a few questions from me, I'll hand the microphone to the audience for a few more. Let's get started. I'll first ask each candidate to give a brief 1 to 2 minute introduction. Why don't we start at this end with Millie and work our way down.
Right. Do you want me to stand up?
I think sitting down is better because of the
Okay.
microphone being in front of you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Millie Milton, and running for Board of Selectmen. I first of all want to say thank you to all of you who came out and took the time to listen to what we have to say. I certainly recognize a number of faces out there. I've been going out the last couple of weeks and extending invitation to come to the Meet the Candidates night, and I'm happy to see many of you here. I am here for a number of reasons, but one of them in particular is starting a business in this town over the past several years has had some complications and some challenges, and I would like to see some of that being addressed as far as how we can make this town more business friendly, more downtown friendly, and work with the economics of a business friendly environment. I also feel that some of the things that we've been challenged by are, as far as our ability to communicate and be accessible to some of the town officials and the leaders. I think we need to bridge that gap, and communication is a big thing, and being transparent with the information that's out there. So I feel that there's a number of different things in this town that we can be doing better, and I would certainly like to see us have the opportunity to make the choice. I feel that we've had a number of different people in these decision-making capacities for many, many years, and they've done a great job. But I do think it's time for a new change, new perspective, and new questions being asked, and hopefully getting some answers.
Jason.
Oh, sorry.
No worries.
I hogged it.
That's okay. That's okay.
We're all friendly in this town. We can share microphones.
I thought I had my own.
Hi, my name is Jason McDonald. I've been in town for about 40 years. Sort of born and raised here. Product of Proctor School, Milliken Middle School, and Algonquin. Jury is still out as to whether or not that's a positive reflection on those institutions. Met my wife at Algonquin. We had the opportunity to move back to town after college, which we did, and we have 2 wonderful children that are currently in the school system now, 15 and 12, one at Algonquin and one at Milliken. I've done a lot of volunteering throughout my time here in Northborough, hands-on, sort of in the trenches volunteering, everything from coaching my daughter's softball team to Cub Master to coaching football. I'm looking to join the Board of Selectmen and asking for your vote to do so, because I feel like I can contribute on a different level. My kids, having grown up, don't really need, they have more professional coaches that can contribute a little bit better than I can. I think that my work experience of 20 years of customer support service and management lends itself well to what the Board of Selectmen are asked to do on a daily basis, namely hiring, appointing committees and performing interviews to do that, as well as listening. One of the things that's driving me to do this is I think we do need a more open government. I think we need more of the information that the decisions that are made at some of these meetings, which are public meetings, to be more easily accessible. Things like perhaps recording the appropriation committee meetings and the discussions regarding the fire station. All those meeting minutes are available, but I think seeing them a bit more firsthand, I think would be beneficial to everybody's comfort level. So I would ask for your vote. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Good evening. I'm Leslie Rutan. And I'm running for the Board of Selectmen. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you to the organizers, the American Legion Post, for putting on this event. I know it's a lot of work to coordinate something like this. I have flyers out back on the table if you're interested in any more detail, and I can always provide more to you. My email address is leslierutan@charter.net. Feel free to write to me anytime. I have lived in town for 28 years with my husband, and all three of my kids went through the school system and graduated from Algonquin happily. Had a wonderful experience here. I began volunteering in the schools as soon as my oldest was in kindergarten. I spent a lot of time with the PTOs, the school councils, went on to the middle school, the council there, and also the high school, and got very involved with them, Education Foundation, and so forth. I was elected twice to the Northborough School Committee and was involved with the feasibility study committee for the middle school, Lincoln, and Peasley schools to discuss whether addition renovations were possible and should happen at those particular schools. That was a long project. I then was elected to the Board of Selectmen and have worked on a variety of projects there. I have served as the chair on the Lincoln Street School Building Committee, and I'm not sure if you're aware, but we did come in at over $1 million under budget on that particular project. It was a 4-year project, a lot of work, but very happily the project came out very, very well, and everyone's happy about that. I've been the liaison to many subcommittees. I attend meetings, all the meetings. I worked on the trash discussion quite heavily. I don't know if you recall, several years ago, we were trying to decide, do we do bags, do we not do bags? How do we do recycling? What should be the timing? What should the price of the bags be? All that sort of thing. Who's the hauler going to be? And I asked during our selectmen's meeting for people to email me and let me know their thoughts. And I compiled those thoughts and presented those at one of our meetings. And we then voted ahead for what is currently happening in town with the trash bags and the collections. So that was a lot of fun. I've worked with K-8 parents recently after attending the K-8 meetings this year and worked on their concerns about voting at the elementary schools and urging that project forward so that we are now voting at the Millikan Middle School for a variety of reasons. Security of students, they're segregated from the voting in the cafeteria. It's also more cost effective to have that there because the safety personnel only required at one building as opposed to 4. I met with Applefest committee members over this past year to go over some concerns that they had about the Applefest parade and the timing and some impetus toward changing it back to Saturday. However, they presented their thoughts to me, and I felt it very important to consider those things and vote accordingly at our selectmen's meeting to have the parade continue on Sunday and see how that goes. They were already mid-year with their planning, and it seemed a shame to have to change that because there are a lot of factors and a lot of variables involved in that decision. And I spoke up at town meeting, this past town meeting, about the need for a quorum, maintaining 100 at quorum, and trying to encourage people to come to town meeting, not have it be easy for people not to come, because that is a place where we all vote and make decisions. That's your opportunity to express your opinion on what's happening in town. So I work with residents. I get back to everyone, whether it's a phone call, email, text, Facebook message, whatever it happens to be. I will get back to you. I will steer you in the right direction if I don't know the answer. And I remain involved with the schools so that I can make informed decisions about our budget, because the school's budget is approximately 60% of the municipal budget. So we need to be aware of what's going on in the schools and pay attention to those needs and concerns. So I, again, hope that you will vote for me. I will continue to work in your behalf and be very aware and interested in your interests and concerns. And we'll always get back to you, and if need be, raise issues at our meetings. Thank you very much.
Joan.
Good evening. My name is Joan Frank, and I'm running for the 3-year position on the Regional School Committee, the Northborough Southborough Regional School Committee. Before I give a little bit about my bio, I would first hope that we could all, in a round of applause, thank Laurie Zinton, Aya Bombard, and Mitch Cohen is our moderator for getting us all here together tonight and doing such a fabulous job, and I hope this is one that will continue in every year. Thank you very much. I guess I'd call myself somebody who's really lucky because when I married my husband back in 1977, we moved to Massachusetts and we went to a realtor, and the house that we're in right now in Northborough, we consider ourselves very, very lucky. We have been Northborough residents for 41 years in the same house. We've added on though. And 2 kids that are the products of one daughter from Algonquin and my son who went to St. John's, but he did go to Northborough Middle School up until 8th grade. Education has been in my blood since I think I was a little girl, and when I graduated from Indiana University of Pennsylvania, I was an elementary school teacher for 7 years in Pennsylvania. When I moved up here, I worked at the private school Immaculate Conception, and then found my last role, which was in Hopkinton Public Schools for 23 years as a literacy specialist. I'm a product of the 1960s when my first president that I remembered was John F. Kennedy. And he said, ask not what you can do for your country, but what you can do for your country. So when the kids were a little bit older, I said, I got to give back to the community. And what was the most fitting role for me was to put my hat into the ring and to be on school committee. So I have been serving on the Northborough Southborough Regional School Committee and also the Northborough School Committee and what is known as the Supervisory Union number 3. So the roles of the school committee is that we are responsible for budget, policy, and hiring and firing of the superintendent and doing the evaluation. I have loved everything that I've done. I've been on school committee now since 1994. And you may say, haven't you achieved what you wanted to get done? And the thing is, no, because education is constantly changing. I lived it, and I can see even the changes that are happening today. Things that I would like to continue are 3 areas. One would be technology. Technology wasn't in even when I administered the MCAS test, and now technology, all the students do it on some form of technology. And we've just had a presentation at the regional committee about how they've had to do that, and it's been a success. I thought it was almost somewhat of a nightmare when the principals had to do the labels, but now we have to make sure that all that technology is fine. And the thing is that all our students in both K to 12 have achieved by doing the MCAS without any glitches. The other thing is special ed. Special ed is something that is always there, that is a mandate. And if you look at the regional budget increased by 3%, but at the same time, in incorporating that, the regular day education was 0.71%, and the special ed budget was 17.55%. There is nothing that we can do about it except look at our staff, look at our curriculum, and see how we can use each one of your tax dollars to the best of the ability. There was just one thing that's coming in initiative is the autism rate. It's now been said on a national news program just this week that 1 out of 59 children have autism. When I was in school, I don't ever remember one of my classmates being diagnosed with that. So those are the new things that we always have to keep abreast of. And the other thing as a regional member would be looking at the assessments. One of the things is that when you look at the budget, Northborough and Southborough have a different assessment rate that we have to pay, as John Cordero explained at the town meeting. It's based on the number of students. And Northborough has higher students now going into the percentages in the 60s, where it's in the high 40s for Southborough. So those October #1 numbers are the ones that we have to pay. So we're looking at, so you say, well, how can we get that to be changed? The reason is look at the course offerings. Right now we offer 3 languages, and to make ourselves more globally would be to look at Mandarin. How do we get it in there, but at the same time be cost effective to make sure that it doesn't have a higher tax rate on you? Thank you very much, and I look for your support.
Sean.
Good evening. My name's Sean O'Shea. I've been to some intimidating interviews before, but this is the largest interview I've ever been to. So chalk that up. Recently there was someone who left the school committee, the Algonquin Regional School Committee, and they asked for applications to fill an interim, and then that leaves a one-year position open. So I was appointed back a few months ago and have been filling in on the Regional School Committee for about 3 or 4 meetings. So it's been a good a time to get to know the members and some of the issues that are facing the high school. I've lived here for 20 years. I have 2 children. One is 20. They'll be 23 and 16 in June. Good 7 years between them. So they've both come up through the school systems. As Jason had mentioned, I've also done Cub Scouts and baseball and soccer and volunteered and all those things. And now that I don't have to run from place to place with them, and have seen the benefit that my children have had from the schools, I'd like to give back to the town. I have been an educator in public education for 27 years. I currently am a principal and have been an assistant principal, a team chair, math specialist, and some other things. So I've worked in a regional school district for the past 10 years and have done a lot of policy making, made school-based budgets, as well as worked on the the district budgets, and really understand deeply how all of the personnel and other grants. There are a lot of grants that go into a budget, so understand a lot of the back end of decision making. On the other side, I get to help evaluate the superintendent, where I get evaluated by the superintendent every year, so that's a blessing for me. But I really look forward to spending the next year in this position, if you so choose, to help continue the excellence of the high school. There are a lot of, when my older son went to college visits, not one of the schools had any questions about the quality of their education. It was like Algonquin put you at the top of the list. The quality of education and the opportunities there are tremendous. But also, as a taxpayer, thinking fiscally too. As Joan was saying, there's a lot that goes into the budget, and thinking about how the dollars are spent or reallocated to meet initiatives so that the impact is not great to the community. So I look forward to listening to everybody's questions, and I would appreciate your vote next week. Thank you.
Good evening, Keith LaBelle, candidate for re-election to the K-8 Northborough School Committee. I'll save you the guesswork. I'm 38 years old. I've been in Northborough for 5 years. I'm a UMass Amherst grad, originally from Central Vermont. We are proud to call Massachusetts our home away from home, and certainly proud to call Northborough our home as well. I'll tell you a little story. 3.5 years ago, I was, before I ran for the school committee the first time, I was a concerned parent at a meeting with the superintendent about class sizes at the time. So we were at Proctor School, and through that process, working along with other parents who were also concerned about the class size, working with Superintendent Johnson at the time, I was very vocal about making a database decision with respect to the class size policy. Vocal enough that I got the reputation as the guy who yelled at the superintendent. So that eventually led to running as a write-in candidate for election 3 years ago, and that's how I got my seat on the committee. So I guess you could view me as kind of an outsider, a fresh face already on the committee. We have since moved across town. We're not at Proctor anymore. I've got a 5th grader at Z School and a 6th grader at Melican. So we've, as parents, had contact with 3 out of the 5 schools under the purview of the K-8 school system. My wife is a Spanish teacher in Hopkinton, so I definitely get, I have that side of things as well, married to a teacher. I originally trained as a speech pathologist, pediatric, worked at Holyoke Medical Center out in Western Mass, and then soon got into the school side of things working in Central Texas, actually. But working as a speech pathologist in the public schools of Central Texas, I also got an opportunity to do special education audits to look at programming in districts in Texas. And one of our focuses was to make sure that funds were being used wisely, that the appropriate programs were being provided to children, but also that children weren't being misidentified and that funds weren't being inappropriately spent on those programs. So, and even prior to that, working a lot with state and federal Medicaid programs. I've long been a gatekeeper of public funds as a healthcare practitioner and speech pathologist, so that's something that I'm very used to. At this point, working at, after 3 years on the Northborough School Committee, I continue really to kind of look for that holy grail that is using continuous improvement of the school programming. Joan mentioned special education programming, technology. These are all obviously issues we need to look after in our town. But while we do that, we have to make sure we use the town's funds appropriately. So always looking for that balance, making sound decisions, database decisions, and working to continuously improve the K-8 schools. Sometimes that requires finding some pretty creative solutions. And I'm pretty proud to be on the tail end of a budget process right now where we came to the town and asked for very little beyond our obligations contractually for the cost of living increase to the teachers, which is one of our biggest costs. So looking forward to serving again another 3 years and to responding to some of the questions you guys might have about the work we're doing on the committee. Thank you very much.
Fred. Good evening, everyone. My name is Fred George. I am a candidate for re-election to the position of moderator. Many people think moderator means this person who has a chair and a whip and makes sure that everyone stays in shape. And believe me, there are times when that is necessary. But a little bit about my background as far as what's going on. First, it came to Central Massachusetts. My career brought me here. And I remember being home on some weeknight, and the phone rang. And I don't remember who it was that called me, but they said, "Fred George?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Understand you work in the field of human resources." At the time was called personnel. "We have an opening on the personnel board. Are you interested?" My first question was, what's a personnel board? And did a little research and found that that's how I really got hooked on the whole idea of municipal government and being a part of that process. I served on the personnel board for a total of 7 years and chaired that board for 2 of those 7 years and had the opportunity to really make some significant changes in how we looked at the human capital, the people that work for the town, what they're all about, how we reward them, how we recognize them. So those were some of the key steps that were taking place at that particular time. Having gone to town meeting a number of years, I kind of fell in love with the whole concept of open town meeting and what it's all about. And I would tell anyone that listened that didn't live in New England, open town meeting is the purest form of democracy that we have in the United States. If you are a registered voter, you have a say about all the major things that take place. And people would look at me and go, "Boy, that sounds like a real 3-ring circus." So what happened was there was an opening on the Board of Selectmen. An individual had moved out of town, and there was a request for people interested to step forward and say that they would complete the term. I did so. I wasn't selected. That happens sometimes. But I got bitten by the bug again and said, I want to do this. So the next opportunity I had, I threw my hat in the ring again, and I must have either convinced people or used my Vulcan mind, trick to get people to vote for me, and found myself on the Board of Selectmen. And it was a great opportunity to understand that one person can't change the world. And it takes a group of people working in unison with one another to really make the changes necessary. And the other thing is I was starry-eyed and impatient and said, you know what? I'm going to put a traffic light on Main Street, not realizing that we don't own Main Street. And there's not much we can do about that except ask politely a number of times, and maybe someone will hear you. But my experiences on the Board of Selectmen were fantastic, an opportunity to really look and help Northborough make that transition from being, you know, one of the little towns that really focused on agriculture and residential, you know, the commuter type of community, to let's try to attract businesses here as well. So that was a major milestone. Had the pleasure of serving on the Board of Selectmen for 9 years. 9 short years. My favorite 9 years. And then an opportunity came along to follow an individual that cast a shadow as big as all outdoors. Most of you know Parker Swan when he was, you know, the moderator. I foolishly threw my hat in the ring for moderator. Okay, and I remember campaigning during that time and people asking me, "Are you going to do magic tricks?" No, I don't have any magic tricks. Well, then, you know, how are you going to be good at being a moderator if you don't do magic tricks? And I decided I need to think long and hard about what it is that I bring to the table to really help that process that I love so much, open town meeting, bring that forward to keep pace with how the times change and how the town changes. So, you know, 2 words came to me first and foremost, and that was fair and unbiased. And I truly believe the moderator is an individual. I have opinions. Believe me, my lovely wife will tell you that I have opinions. But I choose to keep those opinions to myself. I believe that the moderator has the responsibility of making sure that the town meeting, you know, progresses in a way and there's a certain cadence in that town meeting so that people become familiar with the process. I believe I'm an educator. I educate people to what the town meeting process is. I will sit down with people if they want to make a change. How can they make that change and be most effective at doing so? For me, it is, I'm addicted to town meeting. Oh, that, you know, there's got to be some sort of help for people like that. But it's an opportunity to do that. I also believe that, you know, the chance for us to be able to communicate and be an example. I was fortunate enough to be elected president of the Massachusetts Moderators Association. That also was an educational experience for me. I thought all town meetings were just like Northborough. They're not. And going out to Western Massachusetts and seeing them take all the articles, little pieces of paper, throw it in a bowl, and pull them out randomly. And all 18 people in attendance of that town meeting would vote on them. And then, you know, going to Framingham, because at the time Framingham was a town, not a city, and helping them introduce the concept of electronic voting for their representative town meeting. That was an experience also, understanding, you know, I thought, how hard can it be? You go there and you push a button, and everybody knows what's going on. The training process took about 5.5 hours, and people still didn't understand it. So that was fun as well. My belief is that I believe with my experience, with my style, and with my love of the whole concept of town meeting, I wish and hope that all of you go out and support me with your vote. I'm asking for your vote, and I look forward to you going out and pulling that lever or filling in that little box. Thank you very much for coming.
Michelle.
Hi, my name is Michelle Gillespie, and I'm asking for your vote for re-election for the Northborough Planning Board on Election Day. I moved here 25 years ago with my husband. I have 2 children who have graduated from college. My last one is in a couple of weeks, which is great news. That final payment is done, so that's all good because I'm sure a lot of you have experienced it. And when I started with my children and moving to the community, I wanted to get involved right away. I've always been actively involved with the community. I started as a member of the Northborough Garden Club. I was the president of the Garden Club for 7 years, and then moved on to other volunteer positions when my kids were in schools, much like the other committee members. I was on the PTO boards. I was part of sports organizations. I was a Girl Scout leader. But I always felt the need to give back to my community. During the time, it was probably in 2004, which is about 15 years ago, I was asked to run on the planning board at that time. And I did and have not looked back or regretted a minute of it. I've enjoyed every minute being on the planning board. When I started on the planning board in 2004, there wasn't a whole lot of, as far as working with a consultant and looking at the growth of the town and where the town of Northborough will be in 20 years. And so I was on the committee that we first started, which was the community development plan, where we looked at, the areas of town like downtown, Bartlett Street, where the mall is now, and also down where Ace Hardware and Lowe's is, just looking at all those areas where the growth is gonna be and how we can project forward and look at the zoning and how it's gonna impact the people that are there now. And that moved forward to working with the planning board, working with the ZBA, and doing a rezoning, which took probably about 2 or 3 years to work on. But we had, at that time, a really good zoning package, and it takes 2/3 majority at town meeting to pass, and we got that passed. But over time, we've seen that some things have worked out and have not worked out, and we've gone to town meeting with some amendments. And then most recently, on the planning board, along with some other members, we advocated for the town to do a master plan. The last time a master plan was done with your town was back in the 70s. In the master plan, we had the funding where you're really looking at everything in the town and the impact and the growth. I mean, when we talk about the fire department, that's part of the master plan. You want to look at what Northborough is going to look like 20 years from now. And we developed where 3 committee members are sitting on that board, as well as many of the different stakeholders within the community, from Board of Selectmen to other committee members. And we've been meeting for the past, I think, 6 to 9 months. That plan will be published this summer, and then it comes back to the planning board, which you start to look at, re-looking at the zoning and how we can prepare Northborough for the next 20 years. We've gone to town meeting with some articles that have worked and haven't worked, and next year we're gonna look at those articles that are not working and try to come back to town meeting again. I've also been a member of the Community Preservation Committee, and that was very worthwhile to look at. That's a taxation that's on your tax bill each quarter, and it was worthwhile at seeing those projects being developed over town over the past 4 years. As a business owner, I'm a real estate agent. I've opened my office in downtown the past year ago. I've been practicing for the past 15 years. And what I feel like I bring to the board is every Sunday and Saturday when I have my open houses, I hear from the public why they want to move to Northborough. I think that's just a very valuable thing that I can bring. And then I also hear from people who have lived in Northborough for many years why they're moving out and what they wish they would see happen with the town. And so I try to bring all that dialogue to the planning board whenever I think it's valuable, and so that if we need to make changing in zoning, we can. So I hope that you'll re-elect me for the planning board again on May 14th. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to questions now. My first question is for Leslie. Following up a little bit on the master plan discussion, the extensive master plan process is nearing an end. What actions should the Board of Selectmen take to begin implementation of the plan's recommendations?
Well, first of all, we need to have as much of a presentation as possible in open session so that everybody possible can hear what is being recommended by the Master Plan Steering Committee. There are going to be so many things that are going to come out of it that it's hard to really answer that question, because it talks about roads, sidewalks, accessibility, open space, transportation, schools, all sorts of things that could be potentially presented to other committees in town too, that will need to maybe make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. I don't think that the board should act until we've heard recommendations by the appropriate other committees and get as much public input as possible on those.
Thank you. Question for Jason. If elected, this would be your first time on any government board, and it is perhaps the most important board we have. What other areas of the community have you been involved in, and how have those prepared you for this role?
So as I mentioned in my somewhat halting intro, I've done a lot of hands-on volunteering, notably Cub Master, various coaching, and I've attended many of the town meetings. to be a part of the process. As Fred said, I truly do believe that municipal government is the purest form of democracy that there is, and I've been very excited to take part in that when I can by attending those meetings. I think my experience as Cub Master gave me a lot of leadership experience in organizing meetings and working with people. Beyond my town experience, my work experience, effectively I solve problems for a living. I work with both my customers and the people that are part of my organization and beyond my organization to come up with creative solutions to the problems that we see every day. I think that has also prepared me quite a bit for what I would come across as board member.
Thank you. And for Millie, I have the exact same question, which I'll read again.
Thank you.
If elected, this would be
think
your
that was
first
for-
time on any town government board, and it is perhaps the most important board we have. What other areas of the community have you been involved in, and how have those prepared you for this role?
One of the things that I have been involved in is a program called Cooking Matters, and it brings affordable cooking and shopping elements to people that are underprivileged. So I did that with my daughter for a couple of years, not just for the town of Northborough, but for Massachusetts. Some of the things that I have been involved in are, I've been a proponent and an advocate for many of the town-sponsored organizations and fundraisers and charitable contributions. I have, for the last 5 or 6 months, been going to many of the board meetings, the planning board, zoning board committees, and board of selectmen agendas. And one of the things that I've been able to do is take a lot from that to see how things are communicated, what people are talking about, some of the topic matters, the information, how it's going from the people that are making decisions to the people that are the voters and the residents of the town. And one of the things that I think is maybe less informative as it should be is how information is transferred. And I feel that that's something that we can definitely improve upon. I bring an out-of-the-box thinking style that basically wants to answer questions and get questions to their complete, information level. And I feel that that's something that maybe we can do a better job at. I'm not sure if I completely answered your question.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I have been asked to make sure all the candidates, and myself, I assume as well, to speak closer to the microphone and loudly, not only for people in the room, but for people who will watch this later on cable at home. I have another question for Leslie.
Talk into the microphone
Am I-
so we can hear you.
That is exactly what I was asking the candidates to do, and obviously I was failing to do that myself. Thank you. My next question is for Leslie. The Board of Selectmen has one primary employee, the town administrator. Do you believe the board has a good relationship with the administrator, and are there areas for improvement?
The board has an excellent relationship with the town administrator. John Coder is a very experienced, very sought out individual, actually, because he's been asked to speak in other communities about the budget process, because other communities look to him for information on how they should put together their budget to work effectively. We have a debt policy and those sorts of things that we have that other towns would like to mimic if possible. We do have a good relationship with him. He provides information to us so that we have it in a timely fashion ahead of our meetings. He researches information so that we have all the background information prior to us having a discussion and voting on those items at our meetings. So yes, we do have a good relationship with him. I can't think of necessarily anything that's bad about our board and the town administrator's relationship. We're always looking for more information, so the more he gives us, the better. That's always something that can happen, because obviously we want to make as much of an informed decision as possible. And obviously we don't all vote the same way, but we all need the same kind of information in order to make a good decision. So works out well. Thank you.
Thank you. My next question is for Jason. Do you think the Board of Selectmen is as fully engaged with the public as it can be? What about the many committees that report to the board? Are there areas where this should be improved?
I believe that the Board of Selectmen is engaged to a certain extent with the public. I do think that there are some areas where that could be improved. In the past, things like open office hours have been in existence, which I think, and if I was elected, I would absolutely bring back. Just an opportunity for people to have more informal sessions with members of the board, to raise ideas in less formal areas than maybe attending the Board of Selectmen meeting, which absolutely are open to the public, but can somewhat be a little bit intimidating for somebody to get an idea across sometimes. As far as the subcommittees go, one thing that I will note that I mentioned in my opening again, not all of the meetings are recorded. A lot of the meeting minutes are available, obviously, online and handed out afterwards. Those can give you a certain extent in view of the decisions that were made during that meeting, but it doesn't really give you the full context of how those decisions were come to. I think recording and making available as much of that as possible would build a little bit more trust with the public and give people a little bit more context as far as how the decisions are being made and what discussion went into them.
Thank you. And a question? And a question for Millie. If there are any, what actions can the town take to attract additional businesses that are also compatible with our community?
Specifically into the downtown area or?
Anywhere.
Well, I do think that as a person who has gone through some of the difficulties of opening a business in town, I think that some of the challenges that were faced on my end were because there was maybe a lack of communication between some of the different departments, the planning board, the building department, the electrician, the plumbing, engineering, and all those different boards. And the difficulty was that there was basically no communication going between different departments. So I think that there are a lot of opportunities in Northborough to have businesses, but oftentimes businesses go elsewhere because of the difficulties and maybe the lack of communication. Being told that you have all your papers already and everything should be ready to go, and then to find out that another department says, well, wait a minute, no, you don't, actually. And then that has happened, on numerous businesses on numerous occasions. I've spoken to many, many, many of the businesses in town. They're not all taxpayer, and they're not all voters, but they are taxpayers. And one of the difficulties that has been raised time and time again is just how difficult it is to open a business in this town. And I have seen many businesses go to other towns because it's a much more smooth and efficient process, timely-wise. Example being the business in town that was the old Lowe's building. That's been a bit of an eyesore, and it's been a long process for that building. And through different elements of happenstance, it just has been allowed to sit there, and that's not necessarily the best thing for a downtown. I think I answered your question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Moving on to school committee, I have a question for Joan. The tobacco product known as vaping has taken the country's youth by storm. How has this impacted our high school? What actions has and can the school committee take to limit students' use of tobacco and other drugs?
Thank you for the question, Mitch. Can you hear me? Yeah. One of the things that the Northborough, Southborough Regional School Committee and the Northborough K-Date is we have our policies. And one of the things is we have instituted, as in all schools, is a tobacco-free area, tobacco-free schools, the whole area around the schools. And I think that would also take in the vaping. I think that if we have to be more diligent on that, as I said, so many things are always upcropping that we have to take advantage of. I think that it impedes the students if they happen to do it in a restroom or something like that, which would not, I don't think it would take place, but I'm sure at times it can, is that we have to put a stop to that because those students then are coming into the classroom under the influence of the tobacco. And I know even myself that if I'm outside in the public, I can smell when someone even has tobacco. And so I think that we have to make sure that our students have a safe environment to go to school to every day, and that the parents know that they have a safe place that their kids are going to. Some of these laws may be hard to institute. I think the first time when we did the smoking, when I was first on the board, there was smoking at Algonquin. And so what we instituted was we took the doors off the bathrooms. We put a moderator outside of the door, and the kids had to sign in. And at first, of course, they didn't like it. But having the closed door allowed smoking to go on. So I think that if we see an increase in the vaping, I think that we look at the policy and we look how to do to make it a safe environment for all kids.
Thank you. I have a question for Sean. School start times has been a topic of discussion in recent meetings. What are your thoughts on this? And do you think this change is worth the complexities of implementation?
So as a parent of a 15-year-old who I literally have to drag out of bed every morning, I can understand the difficulties teenagers encounter in sleep and getting up. And there's been a tremendous amount of research to show that actually school times should be flipped, that elementary students get up earlier and would benefit from going to school earlier and getting home earlier, and then high school students should come to school later and then get out of school later. The challenge is to do it in isolation as a single district, because it would impact, like sports would be one thing, for example. So students would have to get out of class early to attend a game, say in Oxford or something. So one of the best things that could be done, and I know there's a group studying it, is to look at with the Midwatch League or the other towns that Algonquin, Northborough, and Southborough work with, because it could, if everybody went at once to a change like that, it would be much easier to implement. It'd be hard to do in isolation. So the end of the question was, do I think it is worth all the challenges? I think it's, there have been states that have gone to this, so I don't think it's impossible. We still are on an agrarian calendar. We go to school in September to June, so kids can get out for farming in the summer. So it is, only northern Maine still picks potatoes, but so change is incredibly hard. But like I said, it would be worth it to continue this study, to go through a process and to work with other, not just us as a district, but other towns and even the state level to look to implement change.
Okay, thank you. I have a second question for you, Sean. On July 1st, the district will have a new superintendent of schools. What actions can the school committee take to build a strong working relationship with the new superintendent, and how will you review his job performance as he adjusts to this new role? I'm sorry, did somebody say they couldn't hear me? All right, I will. I apologize. On July 1st, the district will have a new superintendent of schools. What actions can the school committee take to build a strong working relationship with the new superintendent, and how will you review his job performance as he adjusts to this new role?
So I think the benefit of Greg Martineau will be the new superintendent, and the benefit for the district is that he is currently the assistant superintendent. So he's already established a working relationship and trust with a lot of the entities in town and with the school board. So I think as a new superintendent, the school board can support him by continuing to open dialogue and making sure there's transparent, open communication, and to make sure that the processes that are working in town and, for example, with the budget and communication, continue to be supported. It's also an opportunity for him to embark on his own vision and mission for the schools, and for us to, ask thoughtful questions when items come in front of us, but also then be supportive when recommendations come from the administration. How do we evaluate the superintendent? The state lays out a very detailed rubric that of different standards, and then the board can do regular check-ins, and I'm not sure because I haven't been a part of that process yet. But a lot of times there are quarterly or formative assessments mid-year where you look at the performance based on that rubric, give the superintendent feedback as a subcommittee and then a committee, and then evaluate again based on very direct goals at the end of the year. So each superintendent, educator, and principal has to write very specific goals that are measurable and reasonable. So those are easy to evaluate whether you've reached them or not.
Thank you. Question for Keith. Northborough is one of the few Massachusetts towns that charges tuition for full-day kindergarten. Do you think this should change, and why?
Yes, we're already actually in the process of undertaking the the free full-day kindergarten. It's obviously we had to put the budgetary constraints of the district through the FY20 budget process to figure out how to start to bring those funds from reducing tuition onto the operational budget. I spoke earlier in my introduction about creative solutions. We had to get pretty creative as far as finding those funds in the budget, and although it might not be, the transition might not be as fast as everybody wants, we decided on a 5-year plan, but with the hope that we can transition sooner than that. So that's already underway.
Thank you. Fred, question for you. Any registered voter can attend and participate in town meeting. Are there things we as a town can do to increase participation? If attendance increases, what ideas do you have for educating those voters in advance of town meeting?
Great question. The answer is certainly there's a benefit to increasing the participation in the town at the town meeting. And ways to encourage people to do that. I received one of these suggestions this evening before the program started, and that was to reduce an individual household's taxation by $500 if they attend.
So moved.
I reminded everyone that legally we can't do that, but it sounds good. But certainly education is important. I think some people, particularly people who are new to the town of Northborough, are a bit intimidated by this thing called town meeting and what it's all about. And they think that there are special ways that you ask questions and, some of the things, move the question and all those other great phrases that we throw around. What does that really mean? And in years past, and certainly going forward, I plan to work with the town clerk to do seminars on what is town meeting. And certainly using what the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has already provided through the Secretary of the Commonwealth's office is a citizen's overview on what town meeting is all about. And by the way, that's available through our website, our town website. So if you haven't seen it, please take a look at it and see what's happening. Also reminding people that there are no two town meetings that are alike. Okay, it's like our fingerprints. The moderator is the one who really dictates the direction as to how the town meeting is run and what happens. So even if people are coming to Northborough from another part of Massachusetts or New England, this meeting is still different than meetings they may have experienced in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. I have another question for you, Fred. In addition to moderating town meeting, the moderator appoints members to the Appropriations Committee, Financial Planning Committee, Municipal Code and Bylaw Committee, and the Personnel Board. As sole appointing authority, how do you maintain balance of ideas and experience with the members you appoint?
I think two things. Is making sure I'm talking with the chair of that particular committee or commission and understanding what the key objectives are. And then meeting with the individual or individuals that are being considered for appointment and understanding, why are they interested in this? Do they have an axe to grind? Or are they really interested in moving processes forward? And having a good discussion. It's not just a 5-minute conversation, but it's a good discussion and an opportunity for me to really understand that. And people need to understand that my entire career has been in the human resources area. I know how to interview people. I know how to get the information I need. So that's really key and important. There's one individual in this town who suffers from having to deal with that on a regular basis, and I love to remind that individual that I am technically her boss. And that would be my lovely wife right over here. I didn't do the original appointment for Virginia Sims George for many of the roles that she's had in the past years, but I did reappoint her a number of times, and I did that simply not because of who she knows, but more what she has done and getting feedback from the people she's interacted with on a regular basis. So I think volunteerism in Northborough is extremely important, but we want to make sure the right people are volunteering and the right people are being put in the positions that we have open.
Thank you. And a question for Michelle. What is your vision for downtown revitalization? What actions can the planning board take to help make that vision a reality?
So we've gotten a lot of feedback from the master plan about downtown, and I actually think one of the best ways to move forward and start to frame downtown is the use of some of the buildings that are either unoccupied, as the old gas station is where they're planning to put the new fire department. I think having the new fire department downtown will start framing downtown. We've already gone to the extent of purchasing the land to have a town common. And so as you pull all these together, you're starting to see your center of town come together. I mean, we have some other buildings that are older buildings where I know some of the other members of the committee have worked on, where small businesses are trying to come in. We have a business in town that just went into the old Shattuck's place and opened up a new coffee shop. I actually had to wait 20 minutes in line on a Sunday just to get a cup of coffee. So if we can start to take some of the older buildings and preserve the history of those buildings and bring the smaller business in, I think that's going to help revitalize downtown as well.
Thank you. Now it's time for some audience questions. A few rules. All questions should be friendly and positive. We do not allow any questions that I interpret as inappropriate. This means no questions that attack a candidate or questions that imply any sort of negativity at all. Incumbent candidates cannot legally answer questions about union negotiations or current litigation. So it's best to avoid those questions altogether. I have a gavel, and I'm not afraid to use it. Please raise your hand if you have a question, and someone will bring you a microphone.
What is their plan for the White Cliffs?
I need you to wait for the microphones.
What is the selectmen plan for the White Cliffs and the planning board?
I should have clarified. Is your question to all three of the candidates? Okay. Why don't we start with Millie and work our way down? The question is, what are your plans for White Cliffs?
Basically, White Cliffs is right now in the middle of being evaluated. It's at phase 1, I think, of where we may or may not be taking it. I'm not as informed maybe as some of the people on the other boards, but it's still in the process of being developed as for evaluation as to what we can do with it. It first needs to be kind of rehabbed and just stopped from deterioration. And then once there's an architect, the architect involved will basically be putting forth a plan of what we may or may not be able to do with it.
Jason.
I guess I'll start by saying my wedding happened in that building. So if anybody has an emotional attachment to that building, it would be me. That said, I have a bit of a feeling that there was a certain emotional decision-making process that happened when we laid out the money for White Cliffs. And I don't feel that there was as much of a plan as there could have been for what it's going to become. Right now, we're sort of in the process of, as Millie mentioned, architecturally reviewing the building to see what the state is. The reports on that are good, from what I understand, and have seen some of the reports by attending and watching the Board of Selectmen meetings. I think that's progressing well, and if it's able to be saved and built up, I think it has a lot of potential going forward. We just need to be careful that it doesn't become something that we look at as if we already spent $2 million on it, so we need to spend as much more as we need to fix it. There is such a thing as kind of cutting it off and moving forward and not living or looking into the past too much.
Leslie.
Okay. As many of you know, this was a decision that was made at town meeting 2016 using community preservation funds. And a consultant has been hired who will be determining and working to figure out some options for that particular building. In the meantime, it has been secured. But even before the consultant was hired, the DPW checked on the building regularly to be sure that things hadn't fallen off, fallen down, whatever it happens to be. So there are really a lot of different things that could happen with that building. It could become a town-owned, which it is now, but a building for town use. It could be another function place. It could be a mixed-use building, retail, restaurant. There are so many things that could be recommended. So it's really hard for us to say, since we don't make a unilateral decision on the board. We have to wait for the consultant that we have hired to make recommendations to us and determine what we feel is the best option for the money. So it's something that moving forward, we'll be very interested to see what this consultant comes up with. But in the meantime, it is a secure building, and it is one that voters voted on at town meeting using community preservation funds.
Thank you. Another question? Over here. Yes, coming to you.
Hi, Rick Courier. I didn't come here to ask a question, but Leslie, you brought up the fact you were very involved with the garbage collection and how it was paid for. You were very involved in changing the procedure for how garbage was picked up and how it was paid for. And I'm just curious, I think it was called pay as you go, where you'd buy the plastic bags and such. And before that, I guess it was included in your taxes, homeowner taxes, to pay for it. And I guess it was getting very expensive to pay for garbage collecting. But you could deduct that when it was on your homeowner taxes, on your federal income taxes. But now they had to pay for it. I'm just curious how it worked out. Is it working out okay now?
It is, actually. What's interesting is that, first of all, I have not heard anything recently about people's complaints about the bag fees. To me, it's kind of hard to argue for paying, is it $1.50 for a small bag, $2.50 for a large bag? And you get curbside service. And in addition to that, there was another thing that I had come up with, which was the bulky sticker, by the way, which is for $10. It will basically take away anything you want right at the curb. Sofa, treadmill, all those kinds of things. But anyway, I think the trash pickup is working very well. I still have the stack of emails that people sent to me years ago, just in case it comes up again. Things come up cyclically often, and I have kept all those records. But in the meantime, since we decided on that, what's wonderful is that people are recycling more. So there's actually less trash than there used to be and much more recycling. But we now have a new issue with recycling and the contaminated recycling streams across the country and the inability to get rid of our recycling to China and so forth and so on. So we're running into some different issues that do keep evolving. But the trash, to my knowledge, is working out very well. I have spoken with the collectors from time to time, and if I happen to be home when they're picking up, and they're very respectful, nice people who do a good job. They don't throw the bins around on people's yards and hope that they find them. They don't leave the trash on the street if it's a windy day. I've watched them without them knowing it. I've watched them pick it up, put it in the truck. So there are a lot of different issues with trash. It's not just, the bag fees and things like that. It's how is the hauler doing it, and is it efficient, and is it meeting the town's needs? So far so good, I believe.
Thank you. Another question? Fran.
Hi, thank you. So this is for the three candidates for Board of Selectmen, and I'd like to hear from the challengers first. Given that you don't have a record for me to look at to see where you stand on certain issues or not, what I'd like to know is, what do you think on day one, you get sworn in, you sit at a Board of Selectmen meeting, what is the number one priority that you're going to bring to the public and to the town administrator as the newest member of the Board of Selectmen? And then for Leslie to say, what do you believe the number one priority is of a member of the Board of Selectmen?
What was the first part of that question? What did you think? I'm sorry, I lost parts of that.
Day one, you're on the first Board of Selectmen meeting. What do you believe is the priority, the number one priority that you're going to bring to the other members of the board and to the public and to the town administrator?
The number one priority for me to bring to the members of the board is to be the number one priority for me to bring members, to bring to the board is to be able to ask questions and also be an observer of you know, listening to how things are going. I have been doing that for the last 4 or 5 months, and I do think that it could benefit, the board could benefit from having a lot more questions asked, but also having a differing opinion of how things are, how the information is received. I do feel that at times that oftentimes the information, there aren't enough in diverse opinions and questions being asked to the board. Second part, what can I bring to the town? Hopefully being able to bring some of the information from the board to the town, basically through either open hours or open meetings with accessibility. I do find that at times the timing of the Board of Selectmen meetings at night are often difficult for older people and also people with young families. And one of the things that I had been proposing is to be able to offer office hours to people at different times of day that would be able to, they would be able to be more comfortable in presenting some of their opinions and some of their ideas. I do think that having a variety of opinions and ideas and perspectives to bring to the board is of great value to what we can do and how we can represent this town.
She stole my answer. I'm just kidding. No, but in all seriousness, I think the first thing that I would bring to the board would be accessibility and engagement. One thing that I see in town that I would very much like to change is just a general lack of engagement and lack of turnout for elections. Seeing this here tonight, I think, is absolutely fantastic. More people engaged in the process gets more people out to the polls, and the more people that are voting, the more opinions are being heard. Open office hours would be absolutely a day one thing for me. The way a person who has not had a lot of experience in government gets their feet underneath them and going is by listening to their constituents and understanding what the needs and thoughts and concerns of the citizens of the town are. And that's the first thing that I would do. And bring those not just through open office hours, but also potentially through periodic town meeting or town hall meeting type things that are just, you know, informal get-togethers that anybody could come to and raise concerns. Like I said before, the public meetings for the Board of Selectmen and things like that can be somewhat more rigorous and potentially a little bit more intimidating. Informal get-togethers give people a chance to really speak their minds and help those on the board understand what people need from their board and what we can do to make the town better.
Okay, well, first of all, you shouldn't be intimidated by our board. we have a very nice board. Our meetings are all public. I know this is not a debate. I just wanted to comment on that particular aspect, though. The meetings are all public. Anybody can come. We have a public sharing portion. All our meetings are videotaped. Not all the meetings in town can always be videotaped. There are budget concerns to be able to do some of that and hire enough people to do that. Not everybody wants to stand behind a camera for 2 hours on a weeknight. But I do feel that meetings and open meetings and conversation and transparency are obviously extremely important, and I pride myself on that. That's why every now and then I say during our meetings, please sign up for town news through the town website. You get all sorts of stuff through that. You can sign up for agendas, minutes, all the other notices that come through. There are various ways that we do try to communicate, but in a lot of cases, you just have to make the time to come to the meeting or watch a replay of the meetings to know what's happening. Come to town meeting. My first priority right now would be waiting for the Master Plan Steering Committee results, because that is an all-encompassing project that affects everyone. It affects the character of the town. It affects how we operate as a community. It affects what we have to offer our residents. It affects the budget potentially. It's a huge discussion point once that strategy and that discussion comes out. And I, as a board member, don't want to make a unilateral decision, which is why I said previously that I think it's important that we make sure that we have recommendations from the various boards and committees that work with these things in particular to make recommendations for our board and for us to have public sessions on that so that we know how people think. Hopefully everyone here took the surveys that the Master Plan Subcommittee put out. There were a lot of questions on there. There were 3 surveys, and that lets the committee know what the town residents want and what they feel is important. So to me, that's the main thing, is to wait for that and hopefully have a strategy moving forward where we can get input from everybody.
Thank you. We have a question up front here. Could we have a microphone?
I may not need it.
For cable, so everyone at home can hear you. We do need it. There we go.
Thank you. I may be mistaken, but I think my colleague who asked the question before was looking for major issues. If I'm wrong, I apologize, but I will give you a major issue, which I think the town is confronted with, and I'd be very interested in knowing your approach to it. And that's affordability. In a master plan, right now, the way you're conducting the master plan is just a wish list of things. I was kind of hoping that that would take a different direction. And a wish list is no good unless you know the cost of everything that you've got on that list and what it's going to take to implement it, and what the impacts, pro and con, are going to be from doing something like that. If you want a bike trail down Route 20, there's some problems. If you want more sidewalks, there's problems. We've got a community now here, a town now, with 21%, 22% senior citizens. And both young and old are looking on fixed incomes or low incomes, are looking at how do you stay in this town and deal with the property taxes which keep going up, an economic direction and position that the town has taken, a growth and development at all costs, without looking at the effect on the taxes and on the cost to the residents. And I want to know, and I don't see it, and I don't see a heck of a lot of interest in changing, but I'd like to know, Leslie, Jason, and Millie, how are you going to deal with this? Because that's a big problem, not just unique to Northborough, that's communities everywhere, statewide, nationwide. But that's something that we're all dealing with. We cannot continue to build schools and increase populations in town and increase student body without major cost. You cannot keep adding firemen and policemen and open-ended and just raise property taxes and property evaluations and think that everybody's going to be paying for that. There's a lot of us now that we could, it's different when you're working. We put 3 kids through school, but once you go retired and on a fixed income, or you're on a low income, or even a medium income today, you're not keeping up with expenses. You're not keeping up with town cost. So I'd be interested, each one of you take a crack at, Leslie, Jason, really take a crack at what you might do. You've been here long enough in town and you've experienced some of this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Why don't we go in that order with Leslie and then Jason and then Millie?
Okay. It is a huge issue. I agree with you, and I sympathize with that. I know that a lot of the projects that we've done in town have been staggered so that we're not incurring more debt on top of another debt. The Lincoln Street School is pretty much winding down, which is why the fire station was brought forward. There is a very methodical way of approaching all that. I don't know about maybe tax work-off programs and things like that. It really is a very difficult topic because we're a small enough town and we do have revenue coming in from retail and some industry and things like that, but we're not like Shrewsbury, whose rates are lower because they have such a huge Route 9 kind of thing where they have a lot of businesses in that stretch down there, so they have that kind of income coming in, tax income coming in. So we have to continue to work at it to be sure that we're attracting enough businesses to offset that. There's a hotel and meals tax. There are different kinds of creative things that we've tried to do over the years to offset some things. And when you mentioned the master plan, one thing I had said earlier was that there are budget implications with a lot of that, which is why we can't say, oh, that sounds great, let's add more sidewalks, let's do this, let's do that. All these things need to be considered separately and looked at in terms of the cost before we adopt anything. And the more people that can be involved with that discussion, the better, whether that's at our meetings or the more people that come to town meeting, the better. But we're always looking for creative ways to keep the taxes reasonable. But in a small town like this, the revenue that we get is from taxes, taxpayers. So the more business we have to offset that, the better. It is a very difficult situation, and I agree, and we're open to input for any ideas you have as far as what seniors might be able to do, people who are on fixed income, and to offset that.
So I think, as Leslie said, there are a number of ways that we could investigate to mitigate the individual tax impact. The majority of the mitigation being through business taxes and attracting more businesses to town. I think that speaks to improving the center of town and making that more business friendly. I'd also look to investigate and work with a committee on potentially mitigating the tax impact that goes towards schools for senior citizens. Pay towards schools till a certain age, and then some sort of a mitigation after that. Obviously, you don't want to have that have an impact as much as as much as possible to the schools. That's a big part of why people come to town, and it's you always want to have that attraction to have people come to town, but you don't want people to be priced out of where they have spent their entire lives. Affordable housing continues to be a big issue. Being able to have places that people can live and afford, I think, is something that we need to continue to have and work towards. It's as Leslie said, it's a difficult situation, it's a difficult question, but there are creative taxations that we could look into to mitigate the impact on subsets of the population going forward.
I think that's a great question, because the last thing we want to do is to dismiss or drive out the people that have been paying the taxes for 30 to 40 years in this town. And one of the things that I think would be a possibility is talking to other towns and boards of select persons from other towns and seeing how they also resolve some of these issues, because we certainly aren't the only town that has this issue. And affordable housing, I think, is a priority, but also maybe taxing people at the seniors at a different rate or a flat tax so that they can continue to afford to live in this town. I don't have a specific plan or a plan of action, but I do think that listening to what other people are saying in other towns and how they resolve some of these issues might be worthwhile for us to look into. Creating businesses and welcoming businesses. I'm hesitant to say taxing businesses in town, but when you add taxes to business in towns, that makes them maybe look at other towns to go to, not coming into this town. So I'm not sure that raising the taxes is the best answer, but I do think that having a sense of balance and a sense of equity for people who have been paying their taxes and want to stay in this town, to have them that opportunity. So I'm hoping that maybe we can resolve that with doing something more along the lines of keeping their tax rates steady.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sean, you had a question?
The question wasn't directly asked of the schools, but Joan can speak to this too. Just to talk about how to mitigate expenses for the schools, the school committee, the regional school committee, has recently been working with booster clubs, PTO, and other groups to revise our policies so we can allow for larger donations, and outside groups can work to help rehab facilities, say fields, and things that would be larger expenses that would not have to be passed on to the town because of donations from booster groups and so on. So the policies are undergoing a complete review now, because there's so many opportunities, whether it's crowdsourcing and things like that parents and businesses can do to contribute to offset. So those capital improvements don't necessarily have to go into the budget.
I understand that, Sean, on how you're doing that. And I applaud the fact that you know, the school committee does the best they can on trying to keep costs down. There's a lot of people that come into town, like Jason said, just for the school, and at the end of 12 years, they leave. The problem, I think, goes a hell of a lot deeper than just how to raise funds. If I was running for a political office, you know, there's all kinds of contributions we can get, but that's not going to help the senior citizens, those that grew up here and are native to Northborough, and others who have been here a long time now that are on the fixed incomes, where we nationwide, statewide, are seeing just a continual increase in cost due to growth and development, due to overpopulation. And we're not really dealing with it. And nobody wants to talk about limits. For instance, you got 18 square miles here in this town. How the hell many people do you think you can put in here? And keep the cost reasonable, so a lot of my old friends like Henry sitting behind me can stay, you know?
Keep this moving along. I'll give you just a second.
You said I couldn't insult them.
I didn't use my gavel. That's all right.
But I mean, that's what we're faced with. How do you do that? And it's not an easy question, but we're all faced with it. The Cape, same problem. Big houses, big costs, big rents. They're looking now at limiting the size of the homes. They're looking at freezing rents for seniors on some of the lower Cape 4 towns. And these are things that maybe you don't want to think of or have to deal with, but we're going to have to.
I appreciate the comments. I would like to have Michelle from the Planning Board address the concern.
So I just want to give some
earlier.
feedback with regards to affordable housing. As you know, Northborough is at the required amount for affordable housing. When they built the mall and they did the Avalon, that reached that mark. But that doesn't help people who need affordable housing if you want to sell your house that's larger and scale down to something smaller, because that's still relatively expensive.
Just stay in here.
Exactly. So, you know, we had a project in town where they wanted to build upwards of 8 homes, and the planning board asked, you know, would you give any of those homes as affordable, you know, for what they were, for the density that they were asking for. And, you know, at that time, we don't have an inclusionary zoning bylaw, so we couldn't ask that of the developer. And that's one of the things coming out of the master plan, and I know that the planning board's going to address, is how do we bring to town meeting an inclusionary zoning bylaw that says if you're going to build X, 1 has to be affordable, or 2 have to be affordable, which then allows you as a senior to sell your home and move into a smaller home that's affordable. Right now, there's nothing in place that's for that. The only thing in place is that we as residents give part of our taxation to the CPC, and the CPC then puts money aside to build affordable housing. But that's like 1 or 2 at a time. So how do you address the issue at the scale that it is? And we start to look at, if you're really going to allow density, then you need to give back, right? So if you're going to allow density, you need to give back, and how you give back to the housing is maybe give back to the community is affordable housing. And that's really the best avenue we can to bring affordable housing.
Well, and the equation on the affordable housing is changing too. The larger homes.
I apologize. Without the microphone, folks
Yeah.
at home won't be able to hear you, and we only have time for a couple more
I'm
questions.
addressing the ones at home, am I? Okay.
Yeah.
The,
All right. I apologize. We do need to move along.
Okay.
Thank you very much. You had your hand up before, and then we only have time for a couple more questions. After yours, after yours, I would love to get a school committee question, so folks think about that. Here comes Laura.
Thank you. Over the past year, I've attended a lot of committee meetings. I found that, like Fred, I've got the bug of attending the meetings, not joining them, but attending them. Definition of affordable housing is not what you think it is. Affordable housing is 8% below the average for this area of a house. You want senior housing, not affordable, and I've pointed that out to the master plan many times. Talking to Rick Leaf is one of them. He has an idea for senior housing as well as affordable housing. Second comment I want to make, I've been to, as most board members know, I'm a fixture at a lot of the board meetings now. I found them very interesting. It's actually a lot better than TV, to be honest with you. And I found out that after I attended a few of them, I could talk, and they did listen. And I've found, and I've seen other people, I've seen Laura, I've seen Kerry, I've seen other people at these meetings. Since people have started attending the meeting, in fact, you were involved in it, there's more visibility to their minutes. They're posted in a more timely manner instead of years late. And I think if people get involved in the town government, they will find that they'll have a better town government instead of complaining about their government. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. By any chance, sure. Does Michelle, would you like to take the question about senior housing versus affordable housing?
I actually agree with what Henry said, but the only vehicle we can get for inclusion, whether we make inclusionary housing part of senior, is by getting it through these, when you're allowing some, for density, right? You're asking the developer to give you something back. It could be make 2 of them seniors, or make 2 of them affordable, or give money back into an account to build senior housing. That's why we need the inclusionary zoning. So that's a vehicle for getting funds back from a development to build the housing, or having that developer build it right there for the person.
Thank you. School committee question. Over here, in this corner.
I'd be happy to address it to the school committee, but I'd really love to hear from all of the members that are here. I want to thank you all for coming tonight and for putting yourselves forward to run for these very important positions that are very important to this town. My question to each and every one of you, you're asking to either be elected to a 3-year seat or be re-elected to a 3-year seat. What do you see within the board or committee that you want to be elected or re-elected to be the 3 top challenges for the next 3 to 5 years? Because you do short and long-term planning in these positions.
I'm going to ask that the school committee members take this. We've heard a good amount from the Board of Selectmen candidates, and we only have a few minutes left. So perhaps, Joan, do you want to?
Okay.
I see you raising your hand. I'll give it to you.
The top 3 things that I think I talked about them in my opening, but to make it very quick, is the special ed cost. As I said, with autism, that's growing. At the end of Whitney Street, a building that used to be there for sports is now autism. There's another one that's right down the street. It's growing, it's there. So it's the special ed. How do we educate all these students? And when we get the mandates that we have to educate them in the high cost. Our school district has done a wonderful job of trying to keep these students in-house. We have a good collaboration between Northborough and Southborough because we can transport some of these students and make a collaborative in our district instead of doing outplacement, which is then private transportation, which sometimes can be $100,000 for one student. The second thing is technology. It's here, we have to do it. Again, it's another state mandate for the MCAS testing through the Ed Foundation. They have been very gracious in taking the money that they raise and bringing Chromebooks into the school, which has helped to facilitate education. And also is for Algonquin Regional, is to make Algonquin even more exciting with better programs. I agree with everyone that said your kids that went through Algonquin were very well educated. If you look at the course offerings at Algonquin, it's like almost of a college level. And we offer so many different courses, but we have to make sure that we can change the assessment numbers between Northborough and Southborough so they become a little bit more even instead of being the 60-40 that they have been just recently. So those are the 3 things.
Okay. Sean.
3 things I'm thinking of. My years, my term would only be a 1 year, but I would hope to run again. So I suppose I'll see you again next year if elected back here. But looking out 3 years, I think the major issues facing the high school are technology, continuing the excellence in programs while keeping them affordable for the kids there and for the taxpayers. And another thing is the state is keeping pressure on the state to fully fund the programs. Some years they drop their funding on, say, regional transportation down to about 60%. This year it's back up. So make sure the state education funding is kicking in the amount of money they should be and redoing the formula to assist the regional schools the way they should be.
Keith.
Thank you. I have to agree about the science, technology, and engineering, mathematics programming. We have recently hired a math specialist, and we're really trying to revamp our mathematics programming. So, we've obtained a one-to-one ratio with respect to having students with technology in their hands, but it's something that is ever-changing, and we need to keep after it while being mindful of potential budget impacts there. Start School Later that Sean spoke about earlier has potential significant budget impacts and implications on the K-8 programming, so that's something that we need to watch closely. And I agree with Joan with respect to special education programming. When you outplace students, when you don't have the programming they need in the district, it has a huge budget impact. So being sure that we are keeping after making adjustments to the programming in the district to avoid paying the outplacement costs and the transportation costs associated with it.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we are out of time for questions. Next year we'll plan this as a 6-hour meeting. Maybe.
Can I make a quick announcement? We talked a lot tonight about the master plan, and our steering committee is having a meeting this Thursday night at the library at 7 p.m. So if you want to hear more about it and participate and give feedback, the library this Thursday at 7 p.m.
Okay. I was just about to ask each of the candidates to give a brief closing statement if they wish to. Michelle, you could use that as yours if you wish.
Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, and we'll start at that end and work our way down, and there's no obligation to give a closing statement if you don't want to.
It's a microphone.
Take it away, Fred.
I will be very brief and thank each and every one of you for coming this evening. And we talked about how we can make this town a better town. Step one is for each and every one of you to talk to 3 of your friends and encourage them to come out and vote. So that's there. And lastly, I do not have a 3-year term. I have a 1-year term. I do this every year.
Keith.
Yeah, I have to agree that when I reflect on the times that we've had lots of meaningful discussions at school committee, lots of change, creative solutions, it really is typically the result of initially some vocal residents coming to the town meeting and engaging with us and bringing things to our attention. So please do come to the meetings and work with us to make sure we are reflecting what you would like to see.
Thank you. Sean.
I'm just a little older than my colleague here, and what I found over the years highly effective in any situation is being a good listener. I've learned to listen, and it's interesting to hear your questions, comments, and if I were able to serve for you, I'd love to listen and hear your comments about how we can best serve the students, the staff, and the town for the Algonquin Regional High School. So I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Joan.
Thank you for everybody for coming tonight and the wonderful dialogue we've had. And I'd like to thank all the senior citizens that are here tonight for making this such a wonderful community. They've made it so welcome when I came here in 1978, and I hope I can follow in your footsteps and keep it that way. I hope to never lose sight of what this community needs, as far from the senior citizens to the students to the parents to the teachers and to the administrations, and always to strive for excellence and all of that. And also to develop policy and to keep in mind of the community and how we can work together. I have worked with the superintendent to see how we can get to dress rehearsals or musicals at the high school, how we can get tickets for senior citizens. That was something that was involved so many years, but then it sort of dropped by. So we're going to try to see how to get that together so you can share in what you have paid for us and for you who have developed. And in my closing remark, I would just like to quote, seeing that 1 month from today is going to be the 75th anniversary of D-Day, which my father and father-in-law both served in. And Winston Churchill said, never, never, never give up. And that's why we're here today, because they never did give up. And I promise that as long as I'm on school committee, I will never give up for you or forget about you. Thank you.
Leslie.
In closing, thank you very much for being here. This actually has been very enjoyable. It's great to hear different questions and perspectives. I wanted to add that I will continue to work hard for the residents of Northborough, as I have. I will continue to listen to concerns and help to resolve issues. I always get back to everyone. I want to say that again. I pride myself on that. I will continue to encourage more residents to become involved with the many boards, committees, and commissions. We have so many. We have over 30. We almost always have openings. And if anyone's interested, all you need to do is go to the town website. And I actually have the link in my flyer. And look at the information there and see what suits you in terms of meeting days. Some meet once a week, some meet once a month. So there are a lot of opportunities there. I will continue to be transparent in all of my actions. I will look forward to the results of the Master Plan Steering Committee, as I've talked about already, with the hopes of a more walkable, enjoyable downtown, increased open space when opportunities become available, and appropriate zoning that maintains and improves the character of the town. I also feel that with the town common coming online, which is going to be very soon, that will be a wonderful opportunity to highlight and showcase residents, groups, vendors, and businesses in town. And I think we should take advantage of that wonderful space so that it becomes a meeting place and a place for people to congregate and watch whether senior citizens have something they would like to show, students at the high school, whatever. There's so many opportunities for that space. I think it's wonderful. So I humbly ask for your vote on Tuesday, May 14th. Thank you.
Jason.
First, I'd like to say thank you to all of you for coming. This has been a really great experience as a first-timer up here. I'd also like to thank Mitch for moderating and Laura and Ed for putting this together. This has really been beneficial, I think, to everybody involved. I would ask for your vote if I do am given the opportunity to join the board. I promise that I'd be open, accessible, listening all the time, and accountable to each and every one of you all the time. Thank you.
And Millie.
Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. I think it's a great opportunity, again, for us to listen to some of the questions and concerns that you have. And as I've been saying, I've been going to many select board meetings and agendas for the last 4 or 5 months. And I've also been out to many of the neighborhoods that have had some interactions with the town and many of the businesses in town. And I've learned a lot about what people are looking for and what they would like to see happen in this town. And I think that we are all in agreement that Northborough is a great town. It can be better, and we'd like to see how we can do some of those things better. And I do think that bringing a new set of questions and a new perspective, some new ideas to some of the different boards and Board of Selectmen is something I'd love to have the opportunity to have. So I would look forward to the opportunity to represent the people of the town and to work for the people of the town. I'm going to ask for your vote, but I'm also really asking for the ability and the opportunity to work for you.
I have a few closing remarks. Thank you very much to the candidates for coming tonight. It is not easy to speak about yourself in front of a large group, even though it's a large group of friends and neighbors. You all made it look effortless and did a great job. So thank you very much. Thank you again to American Legion Post 234 for hosting tonight's Candidates Night. Just in case you need another reminder, our election is next Tuesday, May 14th, 2019. Polls will be open from 7 in the morning until 8 o'clock at night. And for the first time, we'll be voting at Milliken Middle School rather than the individual elementary schools. For those in the audience tonight, you're welcome to stick around for a little while and discuss anything you'd like without microphones with candidates if they're willing to stick around or among yourselves. And at the back of the room, the Town Common Committee is selling bricks for the Town Common as a fundraiser, and anyone is welcome to buy those bricks either here or online through the end of May. Thank you very much for coming. Good night.